Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the second week of August 2026. I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. This week, Ford gave its $30,000 electric pickup a name. We got July sales results, and a California court case could change how the repossession industry operates. Joining me to talk all about it is Michael Martinez, who covers Ford in the UAW for us at Automotive News. Mike, welcome back, sir.
Thanks, Kel.
And Larry Velaquette, who covers Toyota, Mazda, and Subaru. Larry Legend, it is a pleasure to have you, sir.
Kel, it's great to be here.
All right, guys, we got a lot to dig into this week, so let's get to it. Let's start with Ford. Mike, the new mid-size electric pickup got a name this week. It's called the Fathom, with a starting price of just under $30,000, and it will be built in Louisville, Kentucky. Pre-orders open early 2027. Walk us through what we know.
Well, the new big news is the name, but also the price. And I would argue, we can get into this, I would argue the price is almost more important because Ford has been talking about this is going to be $30,000. We didn't know specifically, but now we do. The MSRP, starting MSRP for a standard range battery is going to be a little over 28 and then about 1,500 shipping, destination and delivery charge. So that brings the grand total, I believe, 29,945. Just under 30K. I think for what you get, it's a very attractive price. And I think that, more so than the name or anything else we talk about, should be what drives its success or failure. But the name was interesting because Ford was pretty quiet throughout this whole development process. And you wondered, since it's going to be a truck, are they going to try to fold it into F-Series? Will they try to give it a alphanumeric like F-150 or F-250, 350, etc.? Would they go with a traditional name that they have in the vault? Would they try to revive an old name that's back there? So a lot of speculation. Ford Fathom, I don't know if we like it or hate it, but we can have a discussion. It's certainly different.
We're definitely going to touch on that, Mike. But first, Larry, Ford executives said that price point was set deliberately to take on the industry's affordability problem. Of course, delivery fees, added features, and destination charges will push that up for most buyers. Do you think this will make a dent?
In affordability, maybe. The issue, though, here is that, yeah, it's a sub $30,000 vehicle, which is great. It's an electric vehicle, which it's coming into the market when electric vehicles are not really popular. If this was coming in at 30 grand and we still had the $7,500 federal subsidy, boy, this would be a market killer, right?
Mhm.
But it's not there. It is. I mean, still getting a vehicle below 30,000, especially a brand new vehicle like this, great. The one thing that Ford didn't reveal is the range that we're going to get this with the standard battery, which is really important, especially on an electric vehicle like this and in a truck. It's a compact pickup, so it's not going to have big pickup capabilities, which is fine. That works perfectly fine. Ford dealers are going to have a product that they can give to consumers who can charge at home and who still can afford a home. They can have a vehicle to get around in that's under 30,000, which is good.
So Ford E General Manager Kay Hart described the Fathom name as meant to give the truck a soul, built for a customer who doesn't look like the traditional truck buyer. Now, Mike, does that kind of positioning work, going after the non-traditional buyer with an affordable price, or is it harder to pull off than Ford is making it sound?
Well, that's the $1,000,000 question, right? If there's one thing Ford is good at, and there's probably people who would argue there is only one thing Ford is good at, it's trucks. They know their truck buyer, but they are admitting this is going to be a different buyer. This is not the same kind of people that use an F-150 for work or to go up north camping if you're in Michigan or to make a trip to Home Depot, right? This buyer is going to use this vehicle a lot differently. They may not have traditional truck buyer needs. So I like the idea of giving it a unique name that sort of nods to that, I personally think Ford Fathom rolls off the tongue quite nicely. Uh, just polling some dealers anecdotally, and for the most part, they seem to like it. A couple noted that it's different, and they liked the strangeness, I guess, of it. But I'm not sure if it's going to have a material impact on who looks at this vehicle or ultimately how many people buy this vehicle. Maybe that's a conversation, Larry. You may have a take on that. I just don't know that if you're on the fence or considering it, a name's going to sway you one way or the other. I don't even know if it should. I would argue it shouldn't. But Larry, maybe you feel differently.
The name is created by committee at every automaker, right? I was really surprised they didn't go with like many folks online, that they didn't go with one of their stable of previous names that that automakers have. Ranchero might have worked in this. Maybe the Galaxy, because it.
Ranchero. Oh, sorry, Larry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Ranchero. I think of the when I think of the Ranchero, I think of a fake El Camino. So like I can't get.
They could have done El Camino,
Let me hop in here because I have a somewhat reporting, I suppose, but there were a lot of speculative stories over the past year plus, and a lot of outlets, both in Detroit and nationally, just sort of using a placeholder name of Ranchero. If you guys notice, you listeners, Automotive News didn't fall into that trap because I had heard a while ago Ford executives just straight out came and told their dealers, no, it's not going to be Ranchero, because the dealers were starting to ask. They wouldn't tell them what it would be. Maybe they hadn't decided it at that time, but they told them, no, we are not doing Ranchero because of basically a negative implication from the from the last one. So they at least had ruled that out pretty early on, over a year ago, from what I have been told.
Yeah,
I did see on LinkedIn that someone had made the suggestion they should have went with the F100.
I
suggested
F50, right? You got the 150, 250, 350, and this is, it's a beginner truck, right?
Right.
And it doesn't really have any other association. I kind of liked F50 because I think it left them room still to do an F100 that was a gas, a small pickup. That's why, I thought maybe an F50, but hey, people make more money.
Maverick might be F100 before it was named Maverick.
Yeah.
So they have that as an option.
I thought we agreed not to mention the name of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought we weren't going to mention the Maverick anymore. We got complaints about that.
0 days.
Yeah.
Now we got to reset the counter.
Damn it. Dang it, Mike. So I have a question for you guys. And you guys have been doing this for a long time. And
Mike is now the dean of Ford reporters, by the way.
Is he? Okay.
He is the dean of Ford automotive reporters.
All right, Mike is management. Okay, look. Mm-hmm. So how much though does the nameplate matter? Because we've heard a lot of bad names over the years of vehicles. And how much does that matter to consumers or even to dealers of like, this name, how am I going to sell this, right? Because I feel like the name of the vehicle, it's almost like it's a touch point. It's kind of like the first impression, right? But I wonder, how much does that even really matter?
I would say that it is you don't want it, if you're a marketing exec, right? You don't want it to be the reason that somebody says no, as much as, just like you don't want it to be the reason, you may not want somebody to say yes just because of the name instead of the vehicle. There have been some horrible names through the years, right? The one that I always go back to, and this dates me, obviously, the Merkur XR4 Ti, which at the time, this would have been, late 80s, maybe early 90s. This vehicle came from Europe, and it was supposed to sound, European and be very continental. And it just failed miserably because nobody knew what the hell the name meant. It didn't make any sense. And that was one of the many reasons that vehicle failed. So you don't want it you're naming a vehicle, you don't want it to be the reason that somebody says no. Now look at another one, a recent one, right? Subaru, when it named its version of the Toyota Highlander, called it the Getaway. And the number of jokes that I heard about, is this now the getaway car, right? Did they do that on purpose?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Is that going to turn off anybody from buying it? Probably not. But do you ever want to give a reason to give a potential customer pause? That I don't think you want to do that either.
So I don't think it should have an impact. That'd be like choosing not to root for a sports team because you don't like their jerseys, right? And that being the only reason. Like, hey, I love the players. I'm from that city, but I'm not going to support them because those jerseys look ugly. I think if you're turned off by a name and that is the decision point, that you maybe need to reevaluate your priorities. But I may be contradicting myself here, but maybe the name is important and you don't need to look back too far in Ford's history to see that with the Mustang Mach-E.
I was about to say that. To say that, Mike. Go ahead. Keep going, Mike. Keep going. You're on to something.
EV was called anything else, generic EV crossover X, I don't think it had a chance in hell to do any type of sales volume. Now, ultimately, it didn't light the world on fire and was part of the industry's sort of failure at those first wave of new EVs. But the only reason it had a chance is because it had the Mustang name and branding behind it. So Ford could market it, and maybe customers considered it because it had the Mustang name. Now, I don't know if they would have been turned away, but I think maybe it did bring more people into the fold. And also it did cause a whole lot of online and in real life chatter and discourse, or a whole lot of disgruntled
enthusiasts
who did not like their purist gas powered Mustang being co-opted for an EV crossover.
You notice there was no that they called the Chevy Equinox the Equinox and not the Chevy Corvette EV, right?
Yeah, touche.
Or
Mike,
I think Corvette.
Mike, I think it would have done better if they would have called it like a Fusion or something.
Really? See, I think the opposite, right?
Really?
They were trying at the time, right? Ford's trying to distinguish itself from that whole wave of EVs that were coming to challenge Tesla and all the startups. And they needed a hook. They needed some type of shtick, right? To get you to look at that one versus the other 10 options you had that were flooding the market. So I think in that case, Mustang helped them.
But do you think at the same time it might have watered down the Mustang nameplate? Because guys that I knew that loved Mustangs ended up going and buying ZR1s and Z06s instead of the new latest and greatest Mustang because they felt like the nameplate was watered down. But like, is that a very small percentage of people?
I think it ultimately was, and that's fair to have that sort of purist viewpoint about the sort of philosophical nature of the name, or you can take a more sort of pragmatic view, and a Mustang is whatever the hell the guy whose name is on the building decides to call a Mustang, right? If Bill Ford says it's a Mustang,
it's a Mustang. Fact. No, that's facts. You can't argue with the guy whose name's on the building. Like you're gonna lose every time. No, facts. That's a great point. My other question for you guys is with this Fathom, and then we have, Slate coming with its truck. Like, how do we think competition wise the Fathom's going to do competing with the Slate? Do we even think Slate has a chance?
I do not. And I hope I'm just not drinking the Ford Kool-Aid because obviously the folks in Dearborn are sort of not pushing this viewpoint, but they would subscribe to this viewpoint as well. I just think logically, when you look at these two trucks and see the price point, that's only a few $1,000s difference. Now, the dealers were reminding me, okay, well appointed, this thing's probably going to be 35, 36, 37. It's going to be way above 30. But still, even if it's likely going to be a less than 10 grand difference with Slate. And you get power windows. You get an entertainment screen. You don't have to stick your Velcro your iPhone to the center console. It's it's so bare bones that for a few $1,000s more, you can have a real quote unquote vehicle, in my opinion. And I think enough people are going to be able to afford it or afford that difference that I'm not sure Slate's going to do well for the price difference, and also for the fact that it's a newcomer, right? And if you if you're somebody who likes trucks, are you going to go with tried and true, or are you going to take a gamble on a brand new company? That, in my opinion, it makes Slate a really tough sell.
Now, I'm going to differ with you here, Mike, only because, and not from my own viewpoint, because I agree with you in terms of buying a vehicle. You want something that you can get fixed. You want something where you can take it somewhere locally if you have a problem, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to quote my 26-year-old son here, who is, just starting out. He's got a job. He just bought a house, right? Getting his life put together, getting it set up. He is extremely excited about this Slate vehicle, not because of the price point so much, but because it's customizable and it's it's a blank slate, right? He can turn it into it with a body kit. You can turn it into an SUV. He thinks that he and his friends are excited to see it because, they'll be able to afford it, presumably. Now, does he realize he doesn't have the background that you and I do? Does he realize the how old crank windows are going to get very fast? Right? Probably not, because he doesn't remember ever having a vehicle with crank windows. But they will get old, as will the fact that it doesn't have any kind of storage behind the seats. Right? It's just got one, it's got two seats and nothing behind. Frankly, I got to tell you, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here. That Slate pickup, as it's put together, is an absolutely perfect starter vehicle for young drivers, right? Because, and I'll tell you why, when you put additional occupants in the vehicle for a young driver, their rate of distraction goes up at 20% for every additional body that's in the vehicle. So if you only got one other seat, that's a perfect vehicle. That's why like an old F-150 single bench F-150 is a perfect starter vehicle. So I think there's a market for Slate. I think it'll surprise some folks. Will it stick around? That's the $1 million question for me.
All right, good stuff, guys. So coming up, we'll look at July sales results as well as the state of the repo market as that affordability crisis makes it harder for folks to keep up on payments. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Think fires in electric vehicles are completely different than fires in gas-powered vehicles? Think again. The key difference actually lies in firefighters' ability to put water on the source of the flame, since battery packs are manufactured to be completely sealed. On this week's episode of the Automotive News Shift podcast, I'm joined by Adam Barrowy, the Principal Research Engineer for the UL Research Institute's Fire Safety Research Institute. Barrowy explains how automakers will have to standardize certain aspects of batteries for safety.
I think we need to get over this challenge of accessibility of the pack to getting water inside it. That's really the biggest item that's in our recommendations.
The Research Institute's new report found that vehicles tended to burn out within 90 minutes when no suppression efforts were made, but there's always a possibility of the fire reigniting. And fire blankets pose their own set of risks by trapping gas, even as the battery continues to react. Join us for Shift, available this Sunday wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Kellen Walker with Larry Velaquette and Michael Martinez. All right, guys, let's turn to sales. So, Larry, July results are in. What jumped out at you?
Again, we are in a market that is surprisingly strong for what the economy should, for where it should be in the economy. We were at a SAAR, a seasonally annualized selling rate that was over 16 again, is now the longest streak of plus 16 million vehicle SAR that we've had in 5 years. And that's very telling that the market is still resilient, even as the outside economy. We got fuel prices that are affecting people. We had a pretty bad employment result this month. We've got a lot of things roiling the economy, including inflation, and the fact that vehicle sales have stayed this level is really pretty shocking. And I think the entire industry is a little surprised, pleasantly, that they've stayed this strong. Now we've cut, as we've talked about before, we've cut millions of people out of the market because of affordability, and that continues to be a problem. That is not a virtuous cycle long term if we don't figure out ways to deal with it. To go back to the Fathom, but the market right now holding strong. It was actually down in July. Those automakers that reported was down slightly, but it was still strong.
Well, Larry, what were some of the highlights of the brands that you cover? Toyota, Subaru, Mazda.
Well, Toyota was down, Subaru was down, Mazda was down.
Ugh.
Yeah, but they weren't down a lot. Toyota was down just 0.3%. Subaru was down 3.7%. Mazda was down 5.6%. So not great, but again, what we're going up against in July was last year was a lot of folks coming in to try and beat tariffs. Toyota's sales are still constrained because of RAV. They still don't have supplies of RAV. We've got waiting lists all over the place as they build that out. They've got the third plant up now in Georgetown up and running. They're starting to make deliveries, so hopefully that'll go away. They're going to be down about 60,000 units for the year, just because of RAV, because of not being able to fill that out. There were some winners, there were some losers out there. Honda, for example, Honda's sales were up 3.8%. Kia sales were up 3.9%. Hyundai was up 2.7%. So the Koreans are continuing to come on strong. Yeah, they really are.
Mike, what about Ford? How'd they look?
They were down 10%, but don't worry, it's all according to plan. That was the message of their sales release, because you can attribute it to the discontinuation of the Escape and Corsair, and they've sort of been downplaying the impact of losing those models. And we've written about how they are keeping those customers in the fold with deep discounts to its other utilities, and to their credit, they're doing that. But still, the sales are down a lot lower volume because they have fewer vehicles to sell. Same with F-150. That's that same story. They're recovering from the aluminum shortage because of the supplier fire last year. But if I could just get on my soapbox for a second, I don't know how many PR people at Ford or otherwise listen to this show, but they had a line in that sales release saying, well, if you take out Escape, and if you take out Corsair, and if you take out F-150, and if you do this and that, our sales would only have been down about 1%, which is actually better than the overall industry. Please don't do that. We're not dealing in hypotheticals here. It doesn't matter if this would have happened or that wouldn't have happened. You got to deal with reality. And reality is they're selling a lot fewer vehicles now because they don't have as many, particularly in the affordable segment. They have more coming. They're promising that. But in the here and now, in July of 2026, it did not look great.
It reminds me of the first role that Kevin Bacon had, right, in Animal House, where right at the end, he's standing there going, all is well, in the middle of the riot.
I mean, that would insult, I feel like, someone's intelligence just a little bit to sit there and say that and give those hypotheticals when that's not the reality of the situation, correct?
Well, I mean, again, you could take a look at their earnings that we talked about last week. They lost money in the quarter because of some one-time items, but their adjusted profits were higher because they're making better margins on the stuff they're still selling, even though it's lower volume. So, you could make an argument that they're not in a horrible spot, but again, just from a purely numbers, sales, throughput for dealers standpoint, it's a lot lower. So, yeah, this is their strategy, and they have every reason to believe that it's going to pay off in the end when you have Fathom and you have some more entry level models on their way by the end of the decade. But again, we're not talking end of the decade. We're talking July 2026.
You know what, Kel, can I jump in? Here's something on kind of an associated tangent, right? Mike brings up a valid point here. Ford, and to its credit, Ford and Toyota, and there are 6 automakers in total that still report their sales monthly. The rest,
thank you for that, by the way.
Yes, exactly. They get kudos for that because they do sometimes take these headlines, that are where they're down, etc. And other automakers moved to quarterly sales results, and there is a movement out there that where some automakers are saying perhaps we don't have to report even quarterly. We should only report maybe half a year, right? Every half we should tell investors and the media how we're doing. The limitation that, and these automakers did that because they didn't want to have to get measured every month, right? The automakers that we cover do. They still report. But it is, to me, it's almost criminal that they are hiding, that these other automakers are hiding their results quarterly. And now some of them want to go even further back, and not tell investors and not tell their dealers how they're doing. To me, it's horrendous to me. This industry used to report sales every 10 days. Yes, that was probably too much. Monthly made a lot more sense.
Wait, every 10 days? When were they doing that?
That's a couple decades ago.
And they just stopped doing it?
They stopped doing that. They went to monthly. That made a lot more sense. But this move to go to quarterly is now what? How old is that, Mike? About 5 years old? When they
pre-pandemic.
It was pre-pandemic. I'm pretty sure. They moved, and then the pandemic screwed everything up. But it really is. It's just horrible. These other automakers don't report sales anymore on a monthly basis.
Before we wrap up, guys, our own Molly Boygon published a package on the repossession industry and a California court case that could have real consequences for how license plate reader data is collected and used. This is a very, very interesting case. Why are repos up like they are right now? It seems like they're higher than they've ever been. Larry, can you touch on that?
They are. And, this is the other side of the sales that we just talked about, right? These are folks who have bought vehicles that they can't afford. They get talked into these vehicles that they can't afford. Repossessions are up. The one of the people that Molly talked to in her package, their repossessions were up 20% year over year, which is a crazy number. That is canary in the coal mine, coughing canary in the coal mine numbers, right? Repossessions are expensive. Lenders do not want to do them. Automakers certainly do not want to do them. They hurt residual values on the other side. Dealers don't want to do them. But dealers also are motivated to push metal out the door, right? A lot of them, especially with those brands that still use stair steps, they go to great lengths to make sure that the folks that walk into their dealership walk out with a new vehicle because their own livelihoods depend on it. And sometimes people walk in and they get talked into vehicles that they can't afford. I mean, look at the number of people out there with $1,000, $1,200 a month car payments, which is, you're shaking your head, Kel.
That's insanity.
I'm shaking. It is insanity, right? And those of us have been around that have a little financial acumen, we can just shake our head. But there are a number of folks out there that for whatever reason, don't think that, oh, well, we'll just, we'll cut back on something else and then I can get this new car. Those people should not be in a new car or should not be in that new car if they can't afford that. And that's a problem for automakers. It's the basis of this whole affordability crisis. Repossessions are something we really need to pay attention to, and great credit to Molly for focusing on this, because it's something we haven't dealt with yet at Automotive News for years. And so, kudos to her for jumping into this.
I just would have never thought in my life and existence that I would see people paying a mortgage payment for a car payment.
Right.
Like that is just, and then the fact that a lot of people have these crazy long 70-month loans and
84, 96.
84. Yeah, that's insane. Live within your means. Like that's crazy. That's crazy.
Frankly, Kel, I can't fathom it.
Oh,
I knew you were gonna get that in before we were done.
You couldn't.
No, we're keeping that staying in,
no,
Martinez.
No,
that's staying in. All right, Mike,
is it inconceivable?
Yeah. Mike, Larry, as always, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for joining me this week.
Cal, thanks so much.
That's all for this Weekend Drive edition of Daily Drive. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer. You can read Molly Boygon's full package on license plate readers and the repossession industry. Catch up on all this week's Ford Fathom coverage and get the latest on everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. And if you enjoy the podcast, remember to leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.